So I have freely admitted before, and I will probably admit it again in the future, that there are times where I am stubborn, I am thick-headed, and I just get stuck on stupid. There's times where it takes me a heck of a lot longer to truly get things figured out than it should. And this is most likely one of those situations. But praise God, I may actually have it figured out this time.
Refine us, Father. My heart's one desire is to be holy, set apart for you, Lord. I choose to be holy, set apart for you, my Master, ready to do your will.
Hi, friends. So, talking about prayer again this week. Yeah, it's one of those things. I love it. I want to do more of it, regardless of how much time I spend during the day praying. I want to do more. And it's kind of been like that for me for a while, to the point where I can honestly say that I know that God has been impressing upon me for a number of years now that prayer is to be a focus of mine. Is it? Not so much. I'm kind of failing in that department. But as much as I love to do it, I know I can always do more. When I began to understand that God wanted me to make it more of a priority than I was, of course, you could probably guess because of the books behind me, it was like, okay, God, you got it. I will read everything that I can get my hands on that has to do with prayer. Prayer and revival, but that has to do with prayer. That is my bookcase that deals solely with prayer and revival. And I can say that the majority of the books on there have been read because I felt like I needed to figure out what the greats had to say about prayer, because obviously they've figured out the secret sauce, right? They know what's going on and how this is supposed to work and what the methodology is and all of the tricks of the trade, right? And it was actually last year that I felt very strongly that God was trying to get through to me that, hey, would you just stop with the reading and meet with me? You're not going to figure out anything in those books that I can't tell you. And so for the majority of last year, I actually abstained from reading anything that had anything to do with theology or doctrine or prayer or any of it. I still read, but I basically was like, you got it. Because if they're getting their information from you, why am I going to rely so much on a middleman? It doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. Just the same, it's something that I found myself really struggling with for some reason, because you find people every now and again that are kind of giants in the faith, that you can look at them, look at their lives, and see that God has moved mightily in and through them. And I think it's kind of a natural thing that you see that, and it's like, God, I want to be like that. That means I have to learn from how they've done things and learn from their mistakes without having to repeat them. And it got to the point where it's almost feels like an unending hamster wheel, because you're always going to be learning from the people, like I said, who got their information from the source of it all, instead of going directly to him who wants to give you this information and have that direct relationship with you. And so what the Lord has really impressed upon me is the fact that a lot of the time we're looking at these greats of the faith and we're trying to learn from them. We're trying to emulate them. We're trying to, like I said, learn from their mistakes without having to repeat them. because we want to learn their methods and their systems and figure out how did they do this and let me incorporate that into my life. How many times do we come across some amazing nugget within a book that we've read, and we determine within ourselves that, oh, I have to incorporate that into my life. This is going to be game changing. This is amazing. Whether it's prayer journaling or verse mapping or whatever it happens to be. And we start to incorporate that into our life, and we're great and we're consistent with it for maybe a couple weeks, maybe a month, and then we fail. It's something that falls by the wayside. And then we allow ourselves to begin to feel guilty about it because this was so game changing for them and it was pivotal in their lives. And why is it not sticking in mine? What have I done? We're trying to incorporate what other people have been instructed and what other people have learned, not stopping to meet with the teacher himself to figure out if that's something he wants us to do or if he has a different method for us entirely. And what he really impressed upon me was that in going about things the way I have, I've been putting him in a box. And I've been saying that this is the method and this is the system that he expects from us. And that if I fall in line with what these other people have learned and done in their lives, that I should get the same response. In doing so, I'm basically trying to hijack a relationship that he has with somebody else. Because you can read scripture, and if you don't come away with the very clear understanding that he is a personal God, and he understands that us as his creation are absolutely individuals with distinct fingerprints, distinct voices. Our DNA is distinct. He knows us from our atoms to our thoughts to all of us. He knows us as distinct. Why wouldn't he have a distinct relationship with us as individuals? And to me, that was just kind of like, yeah, it's a really simple thought. But at the same time, the more you think about it, the more complex it gets. If he has put so much time and attention into our creation that we have those distinct fingerprints and we have a distinct voice, why wouldn't he also want us to have a distinct relationship with him, where each of us, based on our own individual likes, dislikes, how we've been wired, are able to come to his throne room and have those personal experiences that drive others to want to have that type of relationship? It's something that it seems kind of elementary, really, now that I'm thinking about it. And the more I thought about it, it's like, okay, God, this makes a lot of sense. But there's got to be something in your word that confirms this. And basically what came to mind at that point was all of the various times that Jesus healed different individuals that were blind. And you occasionally hear preachers talk about this with his healings in general. But it's like when you look at the blind individuals specifically, because it is the same type of healing as far as what the ailment that is being healed, it's the same. So it's a little bit more cohesive, I'll say. But you look at the various times throughout the Gospels that Jesus heals the blind. He doesn't do it the same way. And I think that that's very intentional because we're his creation. He realizes and knows us better than we know ourselves. He knows that we're going to want to look at things and analyze things and be like, okay, so if I do A plus B, the results I get will be C every single time. And there's no relationship in that. There's no interaction. There's no dependence. There's no reliance upon the throne of God or who he is. It's a system. It's a trick. So I'm just going to read through these verses pretty quick. The first one being Matthew chapter 9, verses 27 to 31. The pericope header there is 2 blind men healed. And verse 27 states, when Jesus departed from there, 2 blind men followed him, crying out and saying, Son of David, have mercy on us. And when he had come into the house, the blind men came to him. And Jesus said to them, do you believe that I am able to do this? They said to him, yes, Lord. Then he touched their eyes, saying, according to your faith, let it be to you. And their eyes were opened. And Jesus sternly warned them, saying, see that no one knows it. But when they had departed, they spread the news about him to all that country. So simply, a touch. According to your faith, let it be. And at that point, 2 men healed. Another section that I wanted to look at was Mark chapter 8, verses 22 to 25. And this one is the blind men at Bethsaida. Then he came to Bethsaida, and they brought a blind man to him and begged him to touch him. So he took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the town. And when he had spit on his eyes and put his hands on him, he asked him if he saw anything. And he looked up, saying, I see men like trees walking. Then he put his hand on his eyes again and made him look up. And he was restored and saw everyone clearly. So it almost seems like, because they bring this blind man specifically to Jesus and they directly ask, hey, can you touch our friend? Presuming it's a friend. Don't know if it's a family member, but can you touch him and heal him? It's almost like they had heard of what happened before with Matthew 9. And they're like, hey, if he just touches you, you'll be better. So it's almost like they're beginning to understand there's a system here. We understand how this is supposed to work. And so you can see that Jesus does it slightly differently. He takes him outside of the town. And yeah, he lays on hands. But he spit on the guy? Okay, that's something of a curveball. And then you get to John chapter 9, verses 1 through 7. And this is the man that was born blind. Now, as Jesus passed by, he saw a man who was blind from birth. And his disciples asked him, saying, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, neither this man nor his parents sinned, but that the works of God should be revealed in him. I must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. The night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. When he had said these things, he spat on the ground and made clay with the saliva, and he anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay. And he said to him, go, wash in the pool of Siloam, which is translated sent. So he went and washed and came back seeing. So there was an element of touch in the application of the clay. But again, it's not exactly the same. It's a different method of receiving that healing, receiving the sight that the man was looking for. And finally, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Bartimaeus. The section I was going to read is Mark chapter 10, verses 46 to 52. And I do have references in the note there for the corresponding sections in the other Gospels. Matthew is slightly debated. There are a lot of very distinct similarities, but there's also a couple of differences. But anyway, Mark 10, 46 to 52. Now they came to Jericho. As he went out of Jericho with his disciples and a great multitude, blind Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus, sat by the road begging. And when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. Then many warned him to be quiet, but he cried out all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. So Jesus stood still and commanded him to be called. Then they called to the blind man, saying to him, be of good cheer, rise, he's calling you. Throwing aside his garment, he rose and came to Jesus. So Jesus answered and said to him, what do you want me to do for you? The blind man said to him, Rabboni, that I may receive my sight. Then Jesus said to him, go your way, your faith has made you well. And immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus on the road. So in this situation, there wasn't even a touch. It was just Jesus asking him, what do you want me to do? and acknowledging that Jesus was the source of the healing that he sought was all it took. Go your way, your faith has made you well. So even in just looking at the healing of these blind individuals, there isn't a system, there isn't a method, there isn't an A plus B equals C to get the results you want. So why do we want to make our faith, especially make our prayer time about this? He's individual. He wants to meet with you in a certain way that is distinct and unique to you, because he created you as an individual, and he knows what is going to satisfy you on the soul level. And it's not necessarily how he met with Jonathan Edwards or Andrew Murray or any of the other individuals that you would read on prayer. He wants to meet with you specifically, with all the quirks and eccentricities and everything else. And that's going to be something that at the end of the day, it's going to be an amazing experience. Yes, there's going to be similarities with the other individuals on prayer. There's going to be elements of praise and worship. There's going to be a time of just seeking him. There's going to be times of healing. But it's not something that an individual can truly write down on paper. This is how I do it, and this is how it proceeds, what is entailed in this. It's not a method that you can teach, because it has to be individual. It's not going to be nearly as impactful if it's not individual. And so I think the takeaway on this is that we tend to be very harsh on ourselves when somebody who is strong in the faith that we look up to has this method or system that works for them. At least from the outside, it looks like a method or a system, but it's what works for them. It's their relationship with Jesus. And we want to try and incorporate that into our lives. We're very harsh on ourselves when that doesn't work, where we don't get the same results and things just, it's like, okay, that's cool, but I expected fireworks. And rather than being harsh on ourselves, I think we need to stop trying to implement what works for other people and instead just focus more on being real before the throne of God. He knows who you are. He knows how he wired you. He knows how to meet with you if you'll just give him the time and the opportunity without the trappings of trying to pretend like you're somebody you're not. Because it's you he wants to meet with. He already met with Jonathan Edwards and Andrew Murray and all the others. He's looking to meet with you. So until next time, friends.